Whoa, it's Wulzy. Welcome back to another building video of sorts where I'm going to show you a bunch of tips you can use in the level editor to make your building more efficient. This is a part 2 to a video I already made. You can find it linked in the description down below. To start off the video, I want to discuss block transitions on and off the screen. If I place a couple of blocks right now and play test, you'll see that they fade on and off the screen at the sides. There's an option in the Edit Group tab that allows you to disable the transition of blocks onto the screen, labeled as Don't Enter. In addition to this, you can also disable the blocks fading on and off, which I recommend, because it's often a lot cleaner with dense block designs. If you choose to allow block transitions, you can change how they move on and off with these triggers in the trigger tab right here. Also in the Edit Group tab, you'll see a button that says Group Parent. When you select a line of objects, for example, and go to rotate them or scale them down, they will scale down to the center point. If, say, the end object has Group Parent ticked, these actions will focus on that point instead. As you can see, these blocks are shrinking around the far right block. Next, I'm going to show you how to make a spawn trigger loop, since a couple of people asked for it in the comments last time. I'm going to make a loop that cycles this object through a color cycle of red, green and blue for 1 second on color channel 1. I'm going to line up the color triggers like so. There's 3 of them. They're all going to be fading for 1 second, which I'm going to add right now. The one on the far left will fade to red, the next one will fade to green, and the far right one will fade to blue. Now I need to line up some spawn triggers beneath these. I'm gonna assign groups to these in columns. Column 1 gets group ID number 1, column 2 gets group ID number 2, and column 3 gets group ID number 3. These spawn triggers should trigger the next column, with the last one triggering the first column to continue the loop. So the first spawn trigger will trigger the second column, the second spawn trigger will trigger the third column, and the final one will trigger column number 1. All of these triggers should have spawn triggered and multi-triggered. The delay on these spawn triggers is quite important too, because the color triggers have a fade time of 1, which I need to mirror right here. So the delay will be 1 second. There we go. Now all I've got to do is start the loop, which is done by taking the far right spawn trigger, the one on the end, deleting the delay, and taking off the spawn triggered stuff. So when this trigger is passed, the loop will start and keep changing the color of the object forever. As you can see, red, green, blue, red, green, blue, and that's only using 3 color triggers. Boom, there we go. I had to teach myself spawn triggers for this video, so leave a like and subscribe for more. We're almost at 9,000 subscribers, which is pretty poggers. So my player color is orange, obviously, as you can see. Now I'm going to show you some crazy color stuff. So I'm going to place this object on color 1. As you can see, I've already set this up to copy color channel ID P1, which is player color 1. Then next to it, I'm going to place an object that uses the official pcol1 button in the Edit Group tab. I'll deselect these, and you'll see there's a difference. So the one on the left is fully opaque, but the one on the right is quite lucid. You can see the background through it. That's because the object on the right has blending. What's blending? Let me tell you. So, say I have an object that's on color 1. This is red, right? If I tick blending, this makes this color channel act like light. So the brightness and hue will stack with whatever the object is covering. So as you can see, this red object is on a blue background. It's looking quite pink because red and blue make a pinky purple color. I'm going to place a non-blending object next to the one that I've already placed, copying color channel 1 without blending, just so you can see the difference. If I change the background to white, copying the color from the default 3D line, and then we change the background to a very plain white pasty background, you'll see that this object has disappeared. This is because this object cannot possibly get any brighter than white, so it just doesn't show up. Now this can be used to make some crazy looking masks. Let me show you. So if I have a black object right here, put it on the lowest layer just to make sure that this object goes above, and I move this object 2 spaces down, you can see while it's selected it's green, it's above that black object. This object is now showing up as red, even though the object is black. This is just a nice way to manipulate blending. I did make a video on this, but that video is kind of dated, and I wanted to bring it in to a more up-to-date, beautiful peak Wulzy video. I'm gonna stop blending you now. I just said blending instead of blinding. I know, I'm an idiot. While we're on the topic of colors, I wanted to do some stuff with a pulse trigger. Okay, so right here I have lined up some basic black spikes, and these are on group 1. With these objects, I want to make the inside of the spikes pulse red and the outside of the spikes pulse white. So this is how a pulse trigger works. You go into it, you set the color that you want it to fade to. I'm looking at main only, which is the outline of the spikes. I want those to pulse white, so I'm going to leave this as white for now. Then I set my fade times. So I want the fade in time to be very short, so it's like a flash of light. I want the hold time to be 0 because I want it to fade back out immediately. And then I want the fade out time to be around about 2 seconds, just so I can observe what's happening. It doesn't happen too quickly for me to process. So this is on the main only pulse trigger. Then on the detail only pulse trigger, I want this to be red, and I'm going to mirror the fade times of the other trigger. And as you can see, when I play, this spike will pulse differently for the main and the detail. Now, a couple of people struggle with perspective with 3D, and I wanted to show you a little technique that you can use to always get your perspectives right. So I've got a couple of objects laid out right here that I want to make 3D. I'm going to select all of these objects, I'm going to copy them, I'm going to add them to a new editor layer, and I'm just going to set them to 50% opacity just for my satisfaction. I want my 3D to be on the top right of these blocks, so they're extending back and right. So to do this, I'm going to move these objects 5 steps, which are these little arrows. They're going to move 5 steps to the right and 5 steps upwards. And then I'm going to deselect them all, view all the editor layers, and as you can see the exact perspective that you need to mirror with your 3D lines. So on editor layer 2, I'm going to go up to this object, I'm going to open up the 3D lines, and I'm just going to start putting the blocks in just to show that it works. Just need to rotate this, copy paste it down, and then we get this bottom object and flip it. There we go. That is the easiest way to see where you need to be with your 3D for it to have the correct perspective for every single object. Right now I'm going to show off a simple masking concept that is used to make an appearing effect. So right here it seems like I've got a clean slate of objects. They're all just scaled up squares that are on B2. Above this though, there is a strip on editor layer 1 that is on T1 and it overlays the objects that are on B2. Then sandwiched between these two layers is an object that's on B1. I'm going to set this to a brand new group 1. This strip is set to white, so when I put a moving trigger down here, group 1, it's going to be moving for about 2 seconds, it's going to be on ease in out, and it's just going to move to the side 20. You'll see this strip emerge from behind the layer that it's hidden beneath. So the thing that makes this work is that you can't tell the difference between this overlaying strip and the background behind it. The last thing I want to do in this video is make a follow trigger effect. So I want to have a couple of objects spaced out. I'm going to put 5 objects right here, and I want these to always stick together and move around with the same distance between each block. So say if this block on the end right here was moved all the way up here, the rest of the blocks will be evenly spaced between. First things first, I'm gonna give all of these objects brand new group IDs in order 1 through 5. These outermost squares are going to be used as bases for the 3 squares in the middle to follow and stick between. I'm going to set out a couple of follow triggers for this. So there's going to be 2 sets of 3. One set of 3 will be following group ID 1, which is the leftmost block, as you can see, group 1. And one set of 3 is going to be following group ID 5, which is the rightmost block. There we go. Just so you can understand how the follow triggers work, as you can see there's like an X mod and a Y mod. I'm going to be showing how exactly that works right now, focusing on the middle square because it's the easiest place to start. So with an odd number of objects, this middle square needs to be 50% away from the left and 50% away from the right, so it's right in the middle at all times. So in both sets of these follow triggers, this object needs to be bound by 50% on both the X and the Y mod, and this will set it to be in the dead center of these objects for as long as the move time on the follow triggers lasts. So I'm just going to set this to 99999 just so it can get going. So I'm setting the X mod and the Y mod to 0.5 for both of these sets of follow triggers. I've set this to the wrong target group ID. I apologize. This was meant to be group 3. So when we're thinking about the left side, the left base is more important. So I'm going to set this to a 1, and the right base is the least important. So I'm going to set this to a 0. Because if you think about it, if we're focusing on this object is not going to move depending on where this object is. This is independent because it's on the opposite end. So since this middle object needs to be 50% away from both sides, this can be 0.5, not minus 0.5, 0.5, and then you can fill in the gaps between these like a sequence. So this can be 0.75, and this can be 0.25. And this is all focused on the first set of these follow triggers because we're thinking about this object right now. So for target group ID 2, we can change the X mod to 0.75, change the Y mod to 0.75, then for 4 we can put 0.25, which for some reason I thought was right on the left hand side, but that goes into negative numbers. And then the Y mod can also be 0.25. Now, when we're thinking about the right base, these numbers all flip around because this becomes 1 and this becomes 0, and then the 7.5 and the 2.5 will have to swap places. Because if we're thinking about this object needs to follow the right base more closely than the left base, which means it's going to have a higher mod. So then we can very easily go and fill in these values with our newfound knowledge. Make sure that the move time is just forever so it doesn't break while I'm trying to play test it. Alright, here is the moment of truth. Is this going to work? I'm going to put down a move trigger. I'm going to focus on the right base. It's going to be moving 200 to the right, so 20 blocks for 10 seconds. And then it's also going to be moving up 10 blocks, so 100Y. I've just readjusted the positioning of these triggers because you've got to make sure that the move trigger comes after these follow triggers, otherwise it's all going to mess up. Hopefully when I press this play button, these blocks are going to be evenly spaced and they're going to move up all at once with one move trigger. Just because of how the follow triggers are set out, you only need one move trigger to move the whole lot of 5. As you can see, they are all even. That does it for this building tip episode. I really hope you enjoyed this, because I really racked my brain trying to think of interesting things to include. I try not to include too many effect-based things, so it applies to every single creator, not just effect creators. But thank you for watching this tips and tricks video. Check the links in the description, leave a like and subscribe, and have a good day.